She ran from a man who beat her, and the cowboy met her at the river and said, "Let's keep going." She left the house before the sky began to change color. The night was still holding on, quiet and cold, as if the world itself was asleep and unaware of what she was about to do. She moved slowly, careful not to make a sound, every breath shallow, every step measured. Her heart beat so loud in her chest that she feared it would wake him. She paused at the door, her hand shaking on the handle, listening one last time. The house was silent. That silence felt heavier than noise ever had. She stepped outside and closed the door behind her without letting it click. For a moment, she stood there, frozen, as if the ground might give way beneath her. This was the place she had called home, even though it had stopped feeling like one long ago. The walls inside held too many memories she wished she could forget, raised voices, broken promises, nights spent staring at the ceiling and wondering when life had become this small and frightening. She did not look back. If she did, she knew she might lose the courage she had somehow gathered. She carried a small bag over her shoulder. Inside were a few clothes, some money she had quietly saved, and nothing else that tied her to that life. Her body ached in places she tried not to think about. She pulled her jacket tighter, not just against the cold but against the feeling that the whole world was suddenly too open and too uncertain. Fear walked beside her, but so did something else, something fragile and new. Hope, even if she didn't dare name it yet. She walked away from the house and onto the dirt road, then off it, choosing the path that led toward the river. Roads felt dangerous. Roads meant being seen. The river felt safer, quieter, like it might hide her if she needed it to. She had followed it once before, long ago, when life still felt gentle. Now she followed it again, not out of memory but out of instinct. With every step, her thoughts tried to pull her back. What if he woke up? What if he followed her? What if she couldn't make it on her own? These questions pressed against her mind, but she pushed them away the best she could. She reminded herself why she was leaving. The last night had been different, not louder, not worse in a way others might understand. It was the look in his eyes that had finally broken something inside her, a look that told her things would never change, a look that made her realize staying meant losing herself completely. The river came into view as the darkness slowly thinned. The water moved steadily, calm on the surface, strong underneath. She stood there for a while, staring at it, listening to the sound it made as it flowed past stones and branches. The river did not ask where it was going. It simply moved forward. She wished she could be that certain. Her legs began to shake as the fear and exhaustion caught up with her. She sat down on a rock near the water's edge, hugging her knees to her chest. Her hands were cold, and when she looked at them, she noticed how they trembled. She told herself it was just the cold, but she knew it was more than that. It was the release of holding everything inside for so long. She thought about the woman she used to be. She remembered laughing easily, trusting people, believing that love was meant to feel safe. Somewhere along the way, that woman had grown quiet and careful. She learned how to read moods, how to stay small, how to avoid making things worse. She learned how to apologize even when she had done nothing wrong. Sitting by the river, she wondered if that old version of herself was gone forever. Time passed without her noticing. The sky slowly shifted, dark blue turning to pale gray. Birds began to stir. The world was waking up, but she felt like she had been awake for years. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she ignored it. The fear of being found was stronger than any other feeling. She told herself she would rest just a few minutes, then keep moving. But her body had other plans. Her eyes grew heavy, and before she knew it, she leaned against a tree and closed them. Even in rest, her mind stayed alert, ready to jump at the smallest sound. She dreamed of running, of doors slamming, of calling for help and finding no voice. A sound pulled her back into the moment. Hooves, slow and steady. Her eyes snapped open and panic surged through her. She scrambled to her feet, her heart racing, scanning the area. For a brief second she thought it was him. Her chest tightened and her hands clenched into fists. Then she saw the horse and the man riding it. He was coming along the river, not rushing, not searching, just moving as if this path was part of his everyday life. He wore a hat pulled low, his posture relaxed but alert. He didn't look like someone chasing anything. Still, she tensed, ready to run if she had to. He noticed her too. He slowed his horse, stopping several steps away. He didn't reach for her. He didn't demand to know who she was or why she was there. He simply watched her for a moment, taking in the way she stood, the fear she couldn't hide, the way her eyes kept darting toward the trees behind her. "Morning," he said, his voice calm and steady, like he wasn't trying to control the situation. She didn't answer right away. Her throat felt tight, as if words had become something dangerous. She nodded instead, her fingers gripping the strap of her bag. "You all right?" he asked, not stepping any closer. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to make this easy, to avoid attention. But something in his tone made lying feel pointless. Her lips parted, then closed again. Finally, she shook her head. "I just need to keep going," she said quietly. He followed her gaze down the river, then glanced back at the path behind her. He seemed to understand more than she had said. He didn't ask about marks on her skin or the way she flinched when a branch snapped in the distance. He didn't ask for her story. "River runs a long way," he said. "Roads are rough in places," she swallowed. "I don't want the road." He nodded as if that made perfect sense. After a moment, he swung down from his horse, moving slowly so he wouldn't startle her. He kept his hands where she could see them. "You don't have to go alone," he said, "if you don't want to." Her first instinct was to refuse. She had learned to trust no one. Trust had cost her too much, but something about him felt different, not heroic, not forceful, just present, like someone who knew when to lead and when to walk beside. She hesitated, weighing her fear against her exhaustion. Finally, she nodded once. "I don't know where I'm going," she admitted. He gave a small, understanding smile. "That's all right," he said. "We'll just keep going." Those words settled into her chest in a way she didn't expect, not a promise of safety, not a promise of love. Just movement, forward, away from what hurt her. She took a step, then another, following the river once more. This time, she was not entirely alone, and for the first time since she left the house before dawn, she felt the tight knot inside her loosen just a little. She didn't know what waited ahead. She didn't know how far she would have to go. But as she walked beside the river, with the quiet sound of hooves nearby and the morning light growing stronger, she knew one thing clearly: she had chosen to live. They walked along the river in silence at first. The water moved beside them, calm on the surface, steady and sure. She kept her eyes forward, afraid that if she looked at him too much, she might feel exposed. Every sound made her tense: the crack of a twig, the call of a bird, the wind brushing through tall grass. Her body still expected danger at every step. The cowboy did not rush her. He walked a little behind and to the side, close enough that she knew he was there, far enough that she didn't feel crowded. His horse followed slowly, as if it understood the pace was not meant to be fast. Now and then he glanced around, not in a way that made her nervous, but in a way that made her feel watched over. Still, she didn't fully relax. She had learned the hard way that calm moments could change without warning. After a while, her legs began to ache. She had walked more than she realized, and fear had carried her farther than strength ever could. She slowed, then stopped. Her breathing grew shallow, and she pressed a hand against her side. Embarrassment washed over her. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want to need anything from anyone. The cowboy noticed immediately. He stopped too, turning slightly but not facing her directly. "We can rest," he said gently. "No hurry." She nodded, lowering herself onto a flat rock near the water. The cool stone felt grounding beneath her. She stared at the river, focusing on the sound it made as it passed by, trying to steady her thoughts. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet felt different from the silence she was used to. This one didn't feel heavy. It felt open. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Without moving closer, he set it down on a nearby rock. "Some bread," he said, "and an apple." She hesitated. Accepting things had always come with expectations before. Her mind searched for hidden meanings for what he might want in return. When she didn't move, he stepped back again, giving her space. "Only if you want," he added. Her stomach twisted. She hadn't eaten since the day before. Slowly, she reached for the food. Her hands shook as she broke off a piece of bread. She expected to feel rushed, judged. Instead, he turned his attention to the river, as if her choice was none of his concern. As she ate, warmth spread through her chest, not just from the food but from the simple fact that no one was watching her closely, waiting to take something back. When she finished, she wrapped the rest carefully and placed it in her bag. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "You're welcome." They rested a little longer, then continued walking. The sun rose higher, lighting the path ahead. As the morning grew brighter, her fear of being seen returned. She glanced around often, worried someone might appear on the far bank or along the trees. "Not many people come out this way," he said, noticing her unease. "Land's rough. Not much reason for them to." She exhaled slowly, relieved. They walked for hours, stopping when she needed water or rest. Each step seemed to peel away a layer of tension, though it never fully disappeared. She began to notice small things: the way the river bent around stones, the sound of insects, the warmth of the sun on her face. These details felt like reminders that the world was larger than the narrow space her life had shrunk into. Eventually, he spoke again. "You don't have to tell me anything," he said, "but if you want to talk, I'll listen." She didn't answer right away. Words felt dangerous. Stories had power, and once spoken, they could not be taken back. For a long time, she had kept everything locked inside, telling herself it was safer that way. "I don't know where I'm going," she said finally. "I just know I can't stay where I was." He nodded as if that was enough. "I thought if I followed the river I wouldn't get lost," she added. "Rivers are good for that," he replied. "They don't lie." That simple sentence stayed with her. She wondered when she had last trusted something to be honest. As the day went on, her feet grew sore and her shoulders ached from carrying the bag. She tried not to show it, but pain crept into her steps. He noticed anyway. "There's an old crossing ahead," he said. "Shallow water, easier walking on the other side." Crossing meant exposure, even for a moment. The thought made her chest tighten, but staying where they were felt worse. She nodded. When they reached the crossing, he dismounted again, leading the horse first. The water was cold around her ankles, but the current was gentle. Halfway across, she lost her footing slightly, slipping on a smooth stone. Panic flared, sharp and sudden. Before she could fall, he steadied her, lightly, carefully, his hand barely touching her arm. He withdrew immediately once she regained balance. "You're all right," he said quietly. She nodded, her heart racing, but something surprised her. His touch hadn't made her feel trapped. It hadn't come with force or anger. It had been brief and necessary, nothing more. The realization left her shaken in a different way. On the other side, she sat down, breathing deeply. He waited without comment. "I'm not used to people being careful," she said suddenly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. He looked at her then, really looked, his expression serious but kind. "People should be careful with each other," he said. "Doesn't always happen." She swallowed hard and looked away. As the afternoon wore on, clouds gathered in the distance. The air grew cooler. She worried about where they would stop for the night. The thought of darkness brought back memories she tried to push away. "There's a place not far," he said, as if reading her thoughts. "Just a lean shelter by some trees, nothing fancy but dry." Fear flickered through her. Shelter meant closeness. But she was too tired to keep moving forever. "We can stay there," she said carefully, if you don't mind keeping some distance." He nodded without hesitation. "Of course." They reached the shelter before sunset. It was simple wooden posts, a slanted roof, open on one side. He gathered firewood while she sat near the edge, watching, ready to leave if she needed to. When he lit the fire, he kept it small and steady. As darkness settled, she wrapped her jacket around herself and stared into the flames. The firelight reminded her of nights spent awake, listening for footsteps, bracing for the sound of a door, her hands clenched in her lap. "You're safe here," he said quietly, not looking at her. "I'll keep watch for a while." Tears burned her eyes. She blinked them away quickly, ashamed of how close she felt to breaking. But something inside her softened. She realized she hadn't felt this level of calm in years, not complete peace, but a pause. A moment where nothing was being demanded of her. She lay down with her back to the shelter wall, her bag under her head. Sleep didn't come easily, but rest did. For the first time in a long while, she closed her eyes without fear pressing against her chest. As the fire crackled softly and the river whispered nearby, she allowed herself to believe, just a little, that tomorrow might be different. Not easy, not perfect, but possible, and that was enough to keep going. Morning arrived quietly. The sky lightened little by little, and the cool air carried the smell of damp earth and water. She woke before the sun fully rose, her body stiff from the hard ground. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. That old panic rushed in, sharp and familiar. Then she heard the river, steady, calm, real. Her breathing slowed as memory returned. The fire had burned down to soft gray ash. The cowboy sat a short distance away, leaning against a tree, his hat tipped low. He hadn't slept much. She could tell by the stillness of him, the way he watched the land as if listening for things others couldn't hear. When he noticed her stirring, he straightened slightly. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied, her voice quiet but steadier than the day before. He stood and stretched, then stepped away to give her space. She appreciated that more than she could explain. She gathered her things slowly, trying to loosen the stiffness in her legs. Every movement reminded her how tired she was, not just in body but deep inside, in a way rest alone couldn't fix. He brought her water from the river, handing it over without a word. She drank gratefully, feeling the coolness ease her dry throat. They started walking again once the sun climbed higher. The path followed the river closely, sometimes narrow, sometimes opening into wide stretches where tall grass swayed in the breeze. The day felt longer than the one before, not because of distance, but because her mind was waking up along with her body. Silence returned between them, but it no longer felt awkward. It felt like shared understanding. She began to notice how he matched his pace to hers, how he slowed when she slowed without making a point of it. No one had done that for her before. She was used to adjusting herself to others, bending and shrinking to fit. This felt different. As the hours passed, her thoughts grew louder. Memories she had pushed down for years began to surface. Small moments at first, a laugh that had faded, a promise that had sounded sincere at the time. She focused on the rhythm of walking to keep herself grounded. Around midday, the sun grew warmer and they stopped near a cluster of trees. He unpacked a little food again, offering it the same way as before, without expectation. She accepted more easily this time, though her hands still trembled. "You've done this before," she said, suddenly surprising herself. He looked up. "Done what?" "Helped someone who needed to leave." He thought for a moment before answering. "Not exactly like this," he said, "but I've seen what happens when people stay where they shouldn't." She nodded slowly. That answer felt honest. They sat in the shade, listening to insects hum in the heat. For the first time, she spoke without being asked. "I used to think if I just tried harder, things would change," she said. Her eyes stayed on the ground. "I thought patience was the same as strength." He didn't interrupt. "I told myself it wasn't that bad," she continued, "that everyone has problems, that it was my fault somehow." Her voice wavered, but she kept going. Speaking felt like opening a door she had held shut with all her weight. It took a long time to realize that love isn't supposed to make you afraid. He let the silence stretch after that, giving her words room to exist. "You're right," he said finally. "It is." Something loosened in her chest. Not everything, just enough. They walked again and the land began to change. The trees grew thicker, the ground more uneven. The river narrowed, moving faster over rocks. She stumbled once, catching herself just in time. Embarrassment flushed her cheeks. "You don't have to push so hard," he said gently. "We'll get there." "Get where?" she asked. He shrugged. "Somewhere better than where you came from." That answer felt right. As afternoon faded into evening, clouds gathered again. The air turned cool and a soft wind moved through the branches. She worried about the night. Fear had a way of returning with darkness, slipping into her thoughts when she was most tired. They found another simple place to rest, sheltered by trees. He built a small fire again, careful and controlled. She sat nearby, watching the flames dance. Fire used to make her uneasy. Too many nights filled with tension and waiting. Tonight felt different. The fire was just warmth. As the sky darkened, she wrapped her arms around herself. The weight of everything she had been holding in finally pressed down. "What if he finds me?" she asked quietly, her voice barely louder than the crackle of the fire. He didn't dismiss the fear. He didn't tell her not to worry. "We'll keep moving," he said, "and when it's time, we'll find you a place where you don't have to look over your shoulder." She stared at the flames, blinking back tears. "I don't know how to start over." "No one does," he replied. "You learn as you go." That night, sleep came in short pieces. She woke often, listening. Each time she saw him still there, awake or resting lightly, always alert. It didn't feel like protection that demanded gratitude. It felt like respect. The next day her body protested more strongly. Blisters formed on her feet, her shoulders burned. She tried to hide it, but pain slowed her steps. He noticed again. He always did. "Let me take the bag for a while," he said. She hesitated. Carrying it felt like proof she was still in control, but the weight was becoming too much. Slowly she handed it over. Relief washed through her as her shoulders eased. She felt lighter, not just physically. Trust, she realized, didn't arrive all at once. It came in small decisions. They passed signs of life, fences in the distance, old tracks near the riverbank. The thought of people made her uneasy again. Her steps faltered. "You don't have to decide anything yet," he said. "Just one step at a time." She nodded. By late afternoon, exhaustion caught up with her fully. She stopped walking, hands on her knees, breathing hard. Tears spilled over before she could stop them. "I'm tired," she whispered. "I'm so tired." He stood a few feet away, giving her space to feel what she felt. "I know," he said. "Rest doesn't mean giving up." She sank to the ground, covering her face. For a moment she let herself feel everything. The fear, the grief, the anger, the loss of years she would never get back. The ground beneath her felt solid, real. She wasn't floating anymore. She wasn't trapped. When the tears slowed, she wiped her face and looked up. He was still there, still patient. "Thank you," she said, "not just for the help, but for staying." He nodded once. "You're doing the hard part." As the sun dipped low again, painting the sky in soft colors, she stood and took another step forward. Her body hurt. Her future was uncertain, but she was still moving. And for the first time, she believed that moving forward might be enough. The land began to change again as they moved farther from the river. The trees thinned, and open fields appeared, stretching wide under the sky. In the distance, she could see signs of people, fences, worn paths, and the faint outline of buildings far away. Her chest tightened at the sight. Being near others still frightened her. People meant questions. Questions meant answers she wasn't ready to give. She slowed her steps without meaning to. The cowboy noticed, as he always did. "We don't have to go into town today," he said calmly. "There's a place on the edge, quiet." She looked at him, searching his face for pressure or expectation. There was none. "I don't want anyone to recognize me," she said. "They won't," he replied. "And if they do, you don't owe them anything." Those words stayed with her as they continued walking. You don't owe them anything. For so long she had lived as if she owed everyone something: peace, silence, patience, forgiveness. The idea that she owed nothing felt strange, almost wrong, but also freeing. As the afternoon passed, they came upon an old farmhouse near the edge of the land. It looked worn but cared for, with a small garden and a fence that leaned but still stood. Smoke rose gently from a chimney. She stopped walking, fear rising fast. "I can't," she said, her voice tight. "I can't go near a house yet." He didn't argue, he didn't try to convince her. "All right," he said, "we'll go around." They took a longer path, keeping distance. That small act, choosing her comfort over convenience, meant more to her than she could explain. It reminded her that she was not being led. She was choosing. They found a quiet spot farther on, near a line of trees. He suggested they rest. She agreed quickly, her body grateful for the pause. She sat on the ground, leaning against a tree, closing her eyes. The sun warmed her face, and for a few moments she felt almost normal. While they rested, she watched him tend to the horse, moving with care and patience. He spoke softly to the animal, not commanding, just guiding. She noticed how gentle he was, how nothing about him felt rushed or harsh. Watching him, she realized something important. Kindness did not have to be loud to be strong. "I keep thinking I should feel happy," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I'm free. I should feel relieved all the time." He glanced at her, listening. "Freedom takes time," he said. "So does feeling safe." She nodded. "Some days I feel guilty for leaving." "That's common," he replied. "Doesn't mean you were wrong." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry this time. Instead, she breathed through the feeling, letting it pass like the river water she had followed for so long. As evening approached, they talked about what came next. He explained that the town nearby had places where people could find work, shelter, and help without being questioned too much. He spoke carefully, making sure she understood she could choose how much she wanted to share. "I won't go with you into town," he said. "But I'll take you close enough so you're not alone." Her heart beat faster. The idea of separating scared her more than she expected. She hadn't realized how much she had come to rely on his quiet presence. "What if I change my mind?" she asked. "Then we adjust," he said. "Nothing is set in stone." They walked again as the light softened. The sky turned orange and pink, and the air cooled. She found herself thinking less about the past and more about what she might want in the future. The thought felt unfamiliar, like trying on a new shape. That night they stayed in another simple shelter. As the fire burned low, she stared into the flames, lost in thought. "I don't know who I am without all that fear," she admitted. He poked at the fire gently. "You'll figure it out," he said. "You get to decide now." Those words settled deep inside her. The next morning they were closer to town. She could hear distant sounds, voices, animals, movement. Her hands trembled as she packed her things. Fear pressed against her chest again, strong and sharp. He noticed. "You don't have to be brave," he said. "You just have to take the next step." She nodded, gripping her bag. They stopped at the edge of the land where the dirt path met a wider road. She could see rooftops beyond a small rise. This was as far as he would go. He handed her the bag and stepped back. "This is where I turn around." Her throat tightened. "I don't know how to thank you." He shook his head. "You don't have to." She hesitated, then spoke. "If I hadn't met you, I don't know what would have happened." "You met yourself," he replied gently. "I just walked beside you for a while." Tears slipped down her face. She wiped them away, standing taller. "Will I see you again?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Maybe. Life's funny that way." She took one last look at him, then turned toward the road. Each step felt heavy but also powerful. She was choosing this. No one was forcing her. As she walked toward the town, fear still followed her, but it no longer controlled her. She knew there would be hard days ahead. Healing was not quick. Trust would take time. But she also knew something else now. She could keep going. And this time she wasn't running. She walked toward the town slowly, each step careful, as if the ground might change beneath her feet. The road felt wide and exposed compared to the quiet paths by the river. Sounds surrounded her, voices in the distance, animals moving, doors opening and closing. Her heart beat fast, but she kept going. She reminded herself that she was not being chased. She was choosing this path. At the edge of town, she stopped for a moment and took a deep breath. The buildings looked ordinary, small shops, modest homes. Nothing about the place felt threatening, yet her body reacted as if danger waited around every corner. She straightened her shoulders and stepped forward anyway. She found a small place that offered help to people passing through. The woman at the door spoke gently and didn't ask questions that felt sharp or accusing. That alone made tears sting her eyes. She was shown a clean, simple room, a bed, a window, a door that locked from the inside. When she closed that door behind her, the silence felt different from anything she had known. No tension, no waiting, just quiet. She sat on the bed and let the moment sink in. For the first time in years, she was truly alone and safe. That night, sleep came in waves. She woke often, listening, but each time she realized nothing was wrong. Morning arrived softly, light spilling through the window. She sat up and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Relief. Days passed. Slowly, carefully, she began to build a routine. She found simple work helping where she could. Nothing glamorous, just honest tasks that kept her hands busy and her mind focused. Each day she grew a little stronger. Each night she slept a little deeper. There were still moments when fear returned without warning. A raised voice nearby. A sudden sound. In those moments her breath would catch and her body would tense. But now she knew how to pause. To breathe. To remind herself where she was. She met people who treated her with respect, who didn't push her to explain herself. She learned that kindness could exist without conditions. It took time to believe it fully, but it began to take root. One afternoon she walked back to the river alone. The water moved just as it always had, steady, patient, unchanged. She stood at the bank and thought about the woman who had arrived there days ago, exhausted and afraid. She barely recognized her. "I made it," she whispered to the water. She didn't know if the cowboy would ever cross her path again. Sometimes she hoped he would. Sometimes she felt grateful that he had come into her life only when she needed him, then stepped away when it was time for her to stand on her own. Weeks turned into months. She saved a little money. She laughed once, surprised by the sound of it. She learned what she liked, what she wanted, what felt right. Fear still existed, but it no longer ruled her choices. One morning, as she walked through town, she realized something important. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. The road ahead was still long. Healing didn't follow a straight line, but she had learned how to keep going, and that was enough. She turned her face toward the sun, took a deep breath, and stepped forward into the life she had chosen.